Hello, everyone, and welcome to the paddock. My name is Henrik.
And my name is Sierra, and we are going to go over our review for F1 at Zandvoort in 2024. I'm going to preference this off the bat. We're recording this on Thursday after everything that's happened.
Yeah,
We will get to the major news.
yep. So just sit tight and wait for that. First and foremost, there is qualifying that we
Well,
should
even
cover.
before qualifying, we had
Yep.
Alpine announcing that Jack Doohan will be the replacement for Esteban Ocon next year, so he is getting that second seat.
Yeah, on a 1-year deal, but still, it's major news.
We Another piece of the who's driving where in 2025 has been revealed,
Yep.
which I'm still 2025. I still want to be here now.
I can't wait. Uh,
Yeah.
well, Jack Doohan is a very good driver, so I am looking forward to seeing what he can do in that horrendous Alpine
I mean,
for 2025. We don't know.
I think it depends on whose hands it's in because we had two very different Alpine races. Just quick, I just quick practice mentions just because it is, I think, valuable to state. But again, Logan Sargent did crash in FP3 on Saturday, so he was not able to qualify.
No.
Um, I mean, other people were having issues throughout the practice sessions. I mean, FP2, Hulkenberg brought out the red flag, getting beached off turn one. Max was not having a good time with the wind and that Red Bull. I don't think he spun, but I don't think he went off at any point.
I don't know. I don't watch practice, but the
We can see
fun
who's the real
thing.
fan here.
Huh?
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I just watched the highlights.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they come on at like I think Zandvoort's practice times for me were 6:30 and then 9. So me watching highlights, help. Don't be mad at me. Me, the poor American fan.
Moving on to quali for Q1, nothing too major really happened.
I mean, I guess the major thing was the impeding call that Lewis did end up getting from impeding Sergio, which affects him later. Uh, I think the major note of that is the fact that Zhou finished a literal whole second off the pace of Valtteri.
Right. But yeah, that's something that's worth mentioning in this period of time where the second Sauber seat is still vacant.
I mean, again, it's note that as much as Logan did get crap for crashes and everything else and not having the greatest race pace, he was still more reliable than I think Joe. I mean, between the two of them, Joe has finished in the points more and has outqualified Valtteri on different occasions. But especially this year, I think Joe kind of no one thinks about him because he's in a horrible car.
That Sauber is horrendous. I won't really say anything else. Not I'm not their consultant or marketing team, so I don't really.
Yeah.
I'm here to slander them.
I just think that I think Joe kind of gets his results, how much he is off his teammate kind of gets brushed under the rug. And I think after Logan leaving, it might be a little bit more in the forefront of people's minds.
Of course, we will elaborate on that a bit later, but yeah, I think that Shaw is a better driver than Sargent for reasons that are obvious. He did finish in the points on debut, which Sargent, of course, did not do, and
Yeah,
he did also score a few points in that season and also last season for Alfa Romeo, as it was known at the time.
yeah, I won't disagree with that. I think there are different factors. There's everything that plays, but I think if you isolate it to this year, which a lot of people, which I think if we're just talking about this year, if I'm remembering correctly, Logan for the most part has finished above Joe each time. And you could say that's the car, but it's usually Joe, even in quali, it's usually Joe P20 and Logan P19.
And
I think
usually
except for like the
there's
first
buttons
race.
between them.
It's
So
I think
the
except for
very
the first
usual
race.
result is Bottas P18, Sargent P19, and Joe P20. So that's
Yeah.
the usual result for them.
But moving on to Q2, the two, I mean, Ferrari didn't look good and hadn't been looking good leading up to this point. So I think Carlos qualifying in 11th at the time was not as surprising as seeing Lewis in 12th, or were they the other way around?
I think it was
No, I'm looking at it right because I'm
yeah.
looking at the correct.
So it was Science P11, Hamilton P12, which uh, both were very surprising in their own rights. But seeing both at once was the thing that made commentary go wild if you watched the
I mean,
F1 TV coverage, which both
if
of
you
us did.
watch even who bumped them, it was Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc was the last one over the line in that, and he bumped both of them down. His teammate now, and his Lewis, who will be joining Ferrari next year.
So
So
both his current teammate and future teammate.
I just found it funny.
Mm,
But yeah, I think it was as I state, I think it was more surprising in terms of the Mercedes not getting there because again, George was by the end of it, George qualified P4 and the Mercedes looked good all throughout practices and the beginning of quali. So to see him in P12 and then once the impeding call was called down in P14, it was unnecessary and his race was very much ruined if there wasn't weather to intervene, which there wasn't.
Well, Q3 wasn't really that eventful apart from Norris taking pole ahead of his teammate and Max Verstappen.
I mean, Norris looked good. He put basically 6/10, 7/10 on Max.
Yep.
The only one to get under a minute 9. So not surprising to see Norris up there, especially
Mm.
after coming off the break. I think if you watched him the whole weekend leading up to quali, you could definitely tell his attitude, how he went about it changed. It wasn't he took it not more seriously because I think he was serious, but he even stated he wasn't thinking the way of a world champion. So seeing him kind of regroup,
Mm.
reset after the break was nice to see. I think it still might be a little too late for him to make a comeback.
Well, let me just add that if you have watched the 2024 season, you of course know what we are discussing, and you of course know that this is the new normal for the time being. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing that Norris is getting the results that he deserves in many ways.
I think McLaren finally, I mean, we'll see how the rest of this half of the season goes, but very promising signs for McLaren coming
Uh,
off this break.
yeah, they
Even
have.
though Oscar wasn't as strong, this is I would say one of his weaker to worst performances of this
Yeah,
season.
yeah. If you base it off of the season alone, I would pretty much agree. But if we were to think of something like
Abu Dhabi, or not Abu Dhabi,
Qatar.
the first race of the season last year.
Oh yeah, Bahrain last year.
Yeah.
That was a good race for him.
No, McLaren were nowhere. He DNF'd.
Oh yeah, he DNF'd. All
Poor
right.
yeah. Other things we may note, Sergio was in fifth. Really good qualifying for him, especially still with everybody asking if he's getting replaced. So to see him qualify well was was nice to see. Charles getting up into P6 with a Ferrari that definitely was on the back foot out of the top four teams was nice to see. Pierre qualifying P9, or it would have been P10. Yes, it would have been
Yeah.
P10. So seeing that Alpine actually get in there, whereas his teammate was just in P16, would have been where he started, was nice to see. But of course, I think the main topic coming out of qualifying was the fact that Alexander Albon was DNF'd after qualifying P8.
Yeah, he got P8, was DSQ'd for
A
some
3 millimeter
technical issues.
wide
Floor.
plank.
So he was disqualified because of the floor, so he had to start in the pit lane, I believe.
I believe he was P20.
Yeah, either
Let me just
P20
double.
or in the pit lane.
Yeah, so what ended up happening for our starting grid was Lando P1, Max was 2, Lewis from his impeding on Sergio Perez in Q1, he dropped down to 14th, and because Alex was disqualified, it did move up some people, so Pierre ended up starting P9, Carlos ended up starting P10, you had Logan in P18, Alex in P19, and then Magnussen actually started from the pit lane because I believe they changed something on his car, I believe.
I think he took some sort of a power unit penalty or something like that.
So that was the starting grid. Of course, everybody going into the race was like, can Lando keep the lead? Is this gonna be another botch of Lando not being able to lead off the first lap? And then
Just to answer that quickly, it wasn't. It wasn't a botch.
I mean, he didn't coming out of turn one, he did not have the lead of the
Nope.
race. But
But he
if you
took it
look,
back quite quickly, so
yeah. But I think you have to look at both. I think everybody on that side of the top, so it would have been Lando, Oscar, and I believe Sergio all got really bad starts. It was made note that Lando and Max had the same reaction time to the lights, but something about the grid on that side just caused wheel spin.
the grid boxes are not very forgiving on most tracks.
But of course, as we stated, Max did take the lead after turn one, but uh
Only to
17
lose it,
lap
only to
17
lose it
laps
at the
later.
same turn. So
I mean, as much as Zandvoort, you can't pass a lot, like it is a difficult track to pass on. You can, if you can make it work, you can get there. I mean, look at Pierre Gasly doing a lot of the overtakes for us, like keeping himself in that the bottom of the points, but staying in the points. Um,
so from P7 up until P10, I think the best position he got was P6.
Yeah, I think he was in P6 before he pitted. So Lando did win the race because he did get back into the lead after lap 17 and then just basically drove away, putting 22 seconds on Max, who finished second. I was like, so this is 2023 all over again? Question
Yeah. Or better yet, 2022.
mark. Oh. I mean, if you looked at the top three were Lando P1, Max P2, and then Charles actually finishing P3. When you look at the cooldown room and Max told Charles how far he was behind, you could see Charles just being like, how did we get back here? How did we get back to somebody being 22 seconds in front of somebody?
Yeah. So it was basically the Lando Norris podcast.
Lando joined late. That was even the worst part because Lando wasn't in the room when they were talking about that.
Well, there is this running gag in the
Oh
F1
yeah.
community that if Max Verstappen wins, the cooldown room becomes the Max Verstappen podcast. So
It's not just if he wins, if he's in that room. If he's on the podium in the cool down room, it is the Max Verstappen podcast, and I will die on that hill.
you will
But
die in that cool down room.
yep, I very much enjoy those cool down rooms. Some other things to be made note of this race, Oscar not being able to catch one, not being able to pass Charles in a Ferrari, that I think everybody, even like the drivers, the team, commentators, even us as fans, seeing that Ferrari have the pace that it did, I don't think anybody was expecting. I mean, I think they both, Charles and Carlos, said in their post interviews that they were only really expecting a P6 to P7. Like that was their expectations. So
Mm,
to one, have their strategy actually work,
which is
uh,
quite the anomaly for Ferrari.
and two, for Charles to be able to keep Oscar behind, who did have fresher tires, who was in the better car out of the two of them. I know Lando got driver of the day, but I think in my opinion, it should have been either Charles or Pierre.
Well, a big honorable mention to George Russell for keeping everyone at bay, down in the P4 to P7
Yeah, I mean
chaos.
that also didn't help him, because Oscar, because what he was stuck behind. The reason Charles was able to stay close, I mean, he Charles did pass Sergio on the first lap, so he didn't have to deal with the Red Bull. But the fact that Oscar couldn't get past George in that first stint allowed Charles to catch up to them.
Yep. So credit where credit is due for George Russell for that one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's still, I think people, at least for me, I sometimes forget that this is still Oscar's second season in Formula One. So he
Yep.
still is learning, but he's so damn good that I think that it's just like we forget. So he still is working on getting the racecraft down. So I think most of his races, like when seeing him not being able to pass, I think the dirty error and still negotiating that part of the race is maybe a little, still needs to be worked on.
But he is by no means a bad driver. He is a
No,
very competent driver.
that is
Uh,
not, yeah.
Also very largely disliked for some reason. I don't know. I like it.
Who dislikes Oscar? Who have you been here? I'm sorry. No, that boy is precious. Like, who dislikes him?
Well, my dad is one of them.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about this if you're listening there.
That's the first time I've ever heard somebody say they don't like Oscar Piastri. I'm like, something else. Carlos being able to get to P5 after starting P10 again, I think that
Mhm.
that shows more that the Ferrari race pace was a lot more than I think everybody was expecting.
And yes, I'm still of the opinion that Carlos Sainz is a superior driver to Charles Leclerc.
Oh, that just opened a can of worms.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it, Pierre Gasly, he finished P9 in an Alpine. Of course he was not involved, but no, it wasn't him. That was the but the sorry. So Pierre Gasly finishing P9, a really good race for him. Again, we are separated of Formula A, Formula B. So to see him,
And possibly also Formula C.
I mean, I just count Salva as an F2 car.
Yeah, yeah, of course there is Saba. There isn't one word in the English language that I can use to
Wheelie
describe that
bin.
card.
Wheelie bin.
It's
It's a
so
it's
mild.
you could say it's a tractor, but I feel like that's an insult to tractors.
Yeah.
I'm going wheelie bin.
All right, we live in it is.
But Pierre finishing in the top of Formula B was, it's 2 points. I wish it could have been, there could have been more on the table for him, because again, that drive was superb on his part, but still to be able to finish in points, I think is what matters to him.
Yeah. He won't really win anymore. It's just unless that Alpine becomes a rocket ship, but probably
We shall
won't.
wait to see with next year. I think the most confusing thing to me that happened this race was the Mercedes strategy because I mean, I get what they did with Lewis. I get doing the two stop with him because he was so far back and he was making his way up. So for him to get to P8 is impressive. I don't think he should have been there in that position to begin with, but he did that to himself. But to pit George when he was
Th-
leading both the Ferrari of Carlos and the Red Bull of Sergio,
That
I
was a mistake.
don't get it. I mean, looking back and seeing the radio messages, apparently he cooked his tires, so maybe they didn't want to have another spa incident.
Well, Spa wasn't horrendous on his tires. He did have a bit of tire left, but
And what, but I think it was more the terms of like maybe being underweight, but
oh
I
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
that,
know.
uh, yeah, it could be, but still, it was a horrible decision to make on their part.
It just
Of
didn't make
course, we have
sense.
had a few days to decompress, and I still don't get why they did that.
I'm not on their pit wall. I am not their strategist. I don't know. I don't know if he cooked them enough to the point that if they didn't pit him, he was going to crash. Like I honestly didn't see like him having issues with his car. So I don't know why they pit him.
Yeah, that's a good
I
argument to
saw
be made.
I saw Max having more issues turning his car than I saw George having issues with his tires.
That Red Bull has not been kind to him.
That he probably wishes he was back in the RB19 right now.
Yeah,
Honestly, if he could do this season in the RB19 and have Lando in his car now, Max would be happy. Max would be a happy camper because it literally would be the two of them up front battling.
in the reverse scenario.
Of course, the last point finisher was Alonso in the Aston. I guess I see Aston in my mind has finally been demoted to Formula B after this
And
race.
have they had the fall from grace or what?
I don't know what's happening there. I really don't. I don't know if it's the team because they are focused around, and they've stated they're focused around Stroll. If the upgrades they're bringing are like Stroll does look more competent as a driver, so don't get me wrong there. I don't think he's a bad driver to begin with. I think he's just extremely inconsistent that he can have really good runs, but also have shit runs at the same time. So it's hard for me to like state that he shouldn't have a seat because it is so inconsistent on his end. But I don't seeing Fernando not being able to always grasp the car. I don't It might be his age coming into play. It could be the upgrades aren't going, but you would think like I just don't know what is happening over there.
No, well, taking into account who owns the team, the focus is on Stroll. For that reason, I believe, suffice to say that the focus shouldn't be on Stroll, it should be on Alonso for reasons that should be obvious.
You can still base it around Stroll. Like that's fine because again, he's going to be 40, around 40. He's almost 40, if not already 40.
But
Like
still,
you need but he's still a very capable driver. I mean, look at last year. He was finishing on podiums consistently.
yeah.
I'm not saying don't build your future around Stroll because again, he's younger and be that what you may, but you still should be. I'm not saying they don't take into Fernando's knowledge or anything like that, but I don't I feel like the way they've gone with it, it's helped Lance more catch up to Fernando than them as a team catch the other teams.
And is that the direction they need? No. They need
I
to
mean, they're
catch
getting
up to other
Honda.
teams and they have to score points regularly and a podium or two at best.
Yeah.
That's what
They're
they need, but they aren't doing that. They are focusing on letting Stroll catch up, which is the wrong strategical move to make on their part.
And I don't think they'll admit that, but I think that's just our opinion of at least it's my opinion on the whole, what's going on in Aston Martin. I
Uh,
mean, they're getting Honda. They're getting a proven constructor winning engine in 2026.
Well, I'm suffice to agree. I'm also going to add that if they keep making the same strategy blunders in 2026, Alonso might be suffice to terminate his contract mid 2026. And what will
I mean,
that do for the brand? What will that do for the team? How will but that potentially affect the Aston Martin family if he leaves come mid 2026?
there was not a lot of overtaking. I mean, there was overtaking, don't get me wrong, but I think the main thing that sticks out in people's mind during this race is Magnussen trying to be a mobile chicane again to the extreme and could have absolutely caused four cars to be taken out of the race very quickly.
Yeah. And of course, another thing that has to be mentioned is Nico Hülkenberg and his very anonymous performance.
He was running in points. He finished P11,
Yep.
so right behind Alonso. I think though he was like I think it was 18 seconds by the end of it that he was behind him or something like that. I could be completely wrong with that. I apologize if I am. But the Magnussen situation for him to fully lift off of the turn leading into the straight going into turn one, and Albon, Stroll, and Alonso basically having to have their reactions being put to the test. I watched that and I was like, how did somebody not crash right now?
Mm. Yeah, and I don't know what to think of that. It was Zandvoort wasn't a good race by any means. It was very
Par.
boring, very generic.
Par.
Yeah, it was lacking in many ways.
I mean,
Uh,
we didn't get a single yellow flag. We didn't get a safety car. We didn't get a red flag. We didn't get a yellow. Zandvoort works because of the weather. We got no weather.
we got no VSC. We didn't get a full safety car, no flags.
All 20 drivers finished the race.
And no weather interventions, no timed race, nothing of the sort. That was anticlimactic,
Yeah.
to say the least.
I mean, I guess the other thing of note is that Daniel was up in P12 by the end of it, but I don't know if that was just I think that's more the fact that RB strategy with Yuki was they flop between who's gonna get the worst strategy. And today it was Yuki,
Mhm.
whereas Daniel got a better strategy.
Another thing to add is that there were absolutely no penalties given out.
No, there was. There's Stroll got a 5 second for speeding in the pit lane because dude went in way too hot.
All right. So there
That's why
was,
he finished P13. I believe he would have been P11, but he ended up finishing behind Nico and Daniel.
okay, so there was no flags, no safety things, but one singular penalty. Okay.
It's I still say Zandvoort is a good race. I enjoy watching it. The angles we get of it is fantastic, but I think this just shows that this race needs some type of it needs that extra little bit. Not saying I want anybody to crash or anything like that. I mean, we even only had one person going off. Magnussen in the very beginning went off. I believe it was turn one, but he was able to get it back on track. Like
Well, all we really needed was a botched pit stop, and that would have done it.
But no, all teams got pit stops good. Even Sauber. Sauber got their pit stops together, giving Zhou an actual a 2.4 stop. Fast, I believe it's the fastest of their season this year.
None of the Sauber pit stops took 400 years, which we are
Nobody
used
lost a
to
wheel
at this
nut.
point.
No
No,
wheel nuts were lost.
no,
No guns were firing. So
no.
if anything, Sauber can be happy that they are getting their pit stops under the control, which was an issue at the beginning of the year where they were winning, actually in point contention. It's now flipped, where their car just sucks.
Yeah. Like you said, beautifully worded. Uh, it would be an insult to tractors, which I absolutely agree with.
I've seen tractors go faster.
Well, if I were to elaborate on that little analogy, I would say that it's an insult to a car without an engine.
Oh, damn. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the race portion of our podcast. But
Mm,
again, as I stated at the beginning of this podcast, we are recording this on Thursday. So we did see the news that Williams has decided to drop Logan Sargent for the rest of the season. This was his last race. And
Yep.
if you look, to be fair, if you look at some of those post qualifying, post race interviews, one of them that stands out is during Lando's it's all over TikTok. George, you see Danny in the background and you see George walk up to him and it looks like Danny says like, "Hey, what's up?" or like, "How is he?" And you can see George explaining to him, his back is facing us, but you can just see Danny's face drop. And if you listen to the radio message to Logan from the pit wall before the race starts, it seems pretty ominous that
Hmm.
after his crash, it was decided.
Uh, and just a little note to our editor here. Feel free to cut that in the audio recording.
But his replacement will be Franco Colapinto
Yep.
of F2 of under the Williams Academy.
Yes.
And of course, Oliver Goter will
Got that.
be promoted to his
F2,
F2 to take over his seat. Um,
which is in MP Motorsport for
yep,
those that wonder.
which means he is out of the F3 contention for winning the F3 championship. He was in the top seven.
I called it. I said that that wouldn't age well, and it didn't.
Well, I don't think either of us said he would win.
Well,
We
I
if you
said
didn't if
I
you didn't
said
listen, people, we put out a podcast, we put out an episode talking about predictions of who we think would win F3. He was in the top seven. Mathematically, he could have still won. It's no longer happening. Just to clarify, gives you guys some context.
yeah. Well, I did say that it probably wouldn't age well.
Yeah,
It did not age well.
it did not. But going back to the Logan being dropped and everything else, I'm not mad at the decision. I get why they did it. I'm firmly under the belief that if Logan didn't crash, could keep himself out of the walls, out of fully destroying the car, because he basically did. I think it's been estimated that he did the same amount of damage to that car as Sergeant or not Sergeant, Sergio Perez did in Monaco. I think that was around the price tag. Yeah, so I think if Logan could have kept it out of the walls, kept it on track, didn't do any major driver errors, he would have finished the season.
Yeah,
What
maybe.
what I don't understand is who they decided to put in the seat. And this is not me being Franco doesn't deserve the seat or he shouldn't be the one promoted. Well, I'm going to say was currently sixth in the championship because after Monza, he will probably most likely not be sixth anymore. But you already signed, you have Albon in there for a couple years. You have Carlos Sainz in the second seat. Where does he go if he does? Like Franco has nothing to lose as long as he doesn't bin it, and he'll be fine. As long
Mm.
as he keeps it out of the wall, keeps it clean, he will be fine. And I personally think this is my opinion. By the end of the season, you might see him, depending on how well he can adapt and how fast he actually is in the cars. He has done free practices before, so it's not like he's completely new to the concept of it. But I think you could maybe see him out qualify Albon.
Uh,
Maybe score a point or two,
yeah, he could
but
potentially take points, which I hope for
Williams'
a
sake.
multitude of reasons. I want Williams to be good,
Hmm.
mostly because of Albon and Vowles, but yeah, they are a very successful team. They were successful in the 1990s and early 2000s, but
Yeah.
not anymore.
And again, I'm not mad that the switch happened. I'm just confused of why they put him in the seat. Why they didn't go for a Mick. Why they didn't go for a Kimmy or a Liam. Hell, why didn't even they didn't even go for Frederick Vesti, who's also a reserve driver for Mercedes. Because and it's more just because if he does really well, what do you do with him?
Oh, well,
He can't go back to F2, I don't think.
well, he can and
He can?
probably
Okay.
will do that.
But will he want to?
I don't, I don't know.
But he won't want to. I assume he won't want to.
No, well, they could. I don't know what kind of clauses he has in play with the Williams Academy, but if I were to act on top of my head, I would just say that he would take some sort of a reserve role or
Yeah.
promoter type thing for them. That's probably the most likely scenario.
I mean, depending on how seats play out, because again, we still have three seats not announced yet. I think it's three left.
Wait, we have
It would be Audi, Sauber slash Audi, Mercedes, and the other RB seat. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure the three that are,
yeah.
and I
So
mean it's,
Sauber, V-Carb, and Mercedes. Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure we know two of those seats.
yeah. One is Antonelli, the other one is Lawson.
Yeah, it's just more where does Daniel go? Does Sergio stay or does Daniel go? Like that's what it goes down to. Um,
And
but
Antonelli Lawson haven't been publicly announced yet, but this is kind of what the rumors have been telling us and what the
oh,
recent runs of form have been telling.
so I'm doing a quick check of Twitter, making sure nothing has been announced about like Mercedes being like, "Oh, we announced a seat." No, Twitter's not going crazy.
Well, Twitter's not going crazy. That's a good idea or a good thing.
I am looking down at a table. Did you move your camera?
I need to charge my laptop.
Gotcha, okay. But if Franco can can outperform, can overperform what I think all of us expect him to do in this last 9 races, maybe he gets a shot in at the Sauber seat just because we don't know anything about who is rumored because I don't even know rumor wise who's getting the seat. To be fair, I really think Sauber is just going to be like, let's throw a bunch of names on a dartboard
Mm.
and throw some darts, and whoever has the most darts in their name afterwards gets the seat. That's where my thinking is.
I think more of a roller coaster type thing. So it's kind of is where they spin and they just pick a name and
Yeah.
that's it.
I understand why Red Bull said they didn't want to loan out Liam because I guess their driver swap could still happen is apparently what was Horner told Valves.
Right.
So of course Sergio's still at play here. I think Antonelli, I think Toto's trying to, I think he's trying to keep him. I don't think he's trying to rush him. I think he's still rushing him, in my opinion, up to F1, but I think he doesn't want him to he wants him to finish the F2 season.
Mm. Well, he has to as per the regulations.
Oh, that's right, because he hasn't. Well,
No.
not necessarily, because doesn't he has the super license points, right?
He has the super license point, but he can't race in F1.
He's
Uh,
18 though. He just turned
yeah,
18.
yeah, but the regulations dictate that you need at least one full season in a feeder series.
isn't that what he wasn't in F3, he was in
Freka.
Freka. Isn't that considered?
No, I don't think that's considered a feeder series to that on that
Uh
path. I think F3 and F2 and all of these series are considered feeder series. Of course, if you're listening to this and if what I'm saying is wrong, feel free to drop us a line on socials.
I'm looking this up because I'm like that wouldn't make sense of why he because of how many times. No, because Freka is technically F4, so it is considered because so many people were saying he's gonna they want because I remember so many rumors of them saying Kimmy's going to replace Logan in Monza back in Miami, so that's why I was like I'm pretty sure he could have because he did win Freka, which is F4.
Well, again, I think the rules require you to have one full season in F2, which he doesn't have.
Nope, because that means Max wouldn't be driving right now.
Well, it was enforced after he came in.
I don't know. This might be a hot take, but I'm not surprised Nick didn't get the seat.
Go on.
One, because Nick did have his opportunity. Yes, it was with Haas. Yes, it was not a great 2 seasons he was with Haas. But if you write off the first season, where his partner was a certain Russian,
Yes. And if you know what we are talking about, you of course understand
Mazza
why we don't mention
spins,
his name.
Mazza spins,
Yeah, Mrs. Spin. Yeah. From now on, we can just refer to him as
the
the
Russian,
man that shall be not be named.
Voldemort.
Yeah,
He's the Voldemort of F1. Um,
basically.
but his second season, his teammate was
Teammate.
Magnussen.
Hmm.
He had a lot of crashes. A lot. And I get it. The Haas was not a good car,
Still
but
isn't,
I would consider it better.
but it's not a good car by any means.
It's I'm double checking this. It's P6, 7 in the standings right now. Hold on, I need to I'm finding it. 7. They are at 27 points, whereas RB Visa Cash App is at 34. So they are on the back of they are fighting for P6 right now. So in my opinion, they are a better car than 3 teams.
Yep. But like I said, the Haas still isn't a good car by any means. It's still a bad car.
But getting back to my point, Magnussen had not been in the car, had just been called up, I think like a couple weeks before the season started. I understand he had more experience, he's been driving longer, but for Mick to I believe he finished behind him in both the in standings, like in point space. And
Hmm.
most of the time on track as well, like in terms of the teammate battle. I think it just shows that's his reputation, and it's hard for him to overcome that. And
Hmm.
I think teams would rather go with someone, Mick isn't old, but someone younger who has been now again, Jack Doohan and Oscar Piastri, each of them both had like a year off, I believe, in between their F2 seasons to getting the seat in their seats in F1. But I think a F2's driver's credentials are showing more optimistic to teams than having somebody who was in a seat like Mick. I
Yes.
apologize to all Mick fans.
And I'm just gonna extend all of my apologies to all Haas fans. I'm not gonna regret saying this, but the Haas has been and will most likely always be one of the better cars in the back of the midfield. Of course, not counting the Sauber, but counting your Williamses, your Aston Martins, your stuff like that. The has been worse, I will say that, but I won't say that it won't get better because probably will with time.
I
But
mean, as
it's
Ferrari gets
bad.
better, it gets better.
It's still bad. I won't really lie about that.
I think they're overperforming this year. I think if you would have told me at the beginning of this year after Steiner left that Komatsu would have been able to get that car that I believe was last in the championship no, second to last
Yeah,
year to
right.
being almost sixth in the constructors this year at this time and have Nico Hulkenberg basically be like being like the Albon of last year, being that the racer nobody expected to have such a good season, even though we know he's really good. I would have told you, yeah, okay, sure. So I'm not saying Haas is going to be like, come next year is going to be challenging for like podiums or anything like that.
No.
But I think they are transitioning, especially with the lineup that they have next season of Behrman and Ocon. I think they are transitioning to be one of those teams that will be for the most part consistently fighting for a P10 to P7 result. Because I feel like next year is just going to be the top four teams are going to be so close that I think it will be you can have some non-conventional point scorers.
Yes. The argument can also be made that it's in the process of becoming its own team, its own little entity in this era where the engine supplier also acts as this senior team.
I don't think Ferrari has ever used. I mean, not saying Ferrari doesn't use them as a junior team because they do ask them to take on their F1 Academy drivers, Mick
Yes.
Schumacher
Uh,
and Behrman being the most recent, especially because Alfa Romeo slash Sauber will no longer be on the grid, so they don't have that option
well,
anymore.
they are still on the grid and they can still take on the
Yeah,
drivers.
but after 2026, it's Audi, so
Yes,
they won't have that
yes.
option.
No, they won't, but I feel as though Haas is kind of stepping away from this breeding ground for Ferrari dev drivers.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think it will come down to if they can get a deal with Toyota, which I think was rumored a while ago. I don't think anything has come of note. For the last point, because I remembered it, as we're talking about Haas, they were almost impounded in Zandvoort and couldn't leave.
Yes, they
They
got
had a
this.
they had a debt they had to pay because when they dropped a certain Russian,
Yes.
they separated from a sponsor
Yep,
and
they
leading into the
separated from their then title sponsor, which was this Russian-owned company that we
I
are
don't
not
know.
going to name.
It's not that I don't want to give them credit. It's more like I really just don't know the name nor how to pronounce it.
Well, I'm
But
not going to name it.
uh but
Just for my own personal safety, I'm not going to name the company.
all right.
But if you know, you know.
Um
It's been a
but
long-standing feud between them, so
Basically they went to court. The court said it was fine for them to drop the sponsor as long as they repaid them. Going into the race, apparently it was not paid, so it was made note that if it wasn't paid by the end of the weekend, they would not be able to leave with their cars. It
so
was
they basically got this cease and desist type
Yeah,
thing.
basically. But payment was made on Friday. I'm pretty sure it was stated they were able to leave, I believe, by like 1 or 2 in the afternoon their time on Monday. So I don't know what that means for them going into Monza. I mean, they still got there. They still have all their equipment that they've had now. I'm just stating more in terms of like they're a day behind travel wise. So we shall see. I
Yep.
just was like, that was a major point. Should actually mention it, remembering what happened on a boring weekend.
Yeah. And I think that kind of wraps everything up.
Yeah, boring race. Land of domination is apparently happening. We give the best to Logan Sargent wherever he goes. No
He has been
more.
in talks with Prema, the Prema IndyCar team, so we will
Yeah,
see if he ends up there. If he ends up there, good on him, of
I mean,
course.
I think so many people are mad at Williams. So many people are mad at Williams. I'm just gonna
Uh,
keep my mouth shut. I
okay,
stated,
I'm just gonna say this. I understand why they would be mad.
yeah, no, I completely understand it. Going into it with taking a bias out, that I understand it. I understand the decision. I understand it sucks. Seeing Albon's response to the news and his post for it, I honestly almost did cry a bit off that because Alex does know what it's like
To be dropped mid-season.
to be dropped. I don't think it was mid-season for Alex, but he was dropped after his 2020 season. So seeing that and seeing, I think the reason why, at least for me, I get more annoyed with the whole Williams issue on like side of this is the fact that you have Alex, you have F1 themselves, you have Sky Sports giving a better tribute to his time there than you actually had Williams. Even when Williams was courting signs, I get it. You weren't going to re-sign him. That is completely a valid decision off of what he was doing this season and last season.
Yeah, that's a perfectly
But
yeah.
again,
That point has to be made. Not have to defend James also or anything, but yeah, I do think that not re-signing Logan Sargent was the right move for them.
it's just it's the way they went about it. Especially if you think back at the beginning of the season where one they didn't have a Williams will finish up shortly, but I'm going on a rant quickly. One, Williams didn't finish their car until literally the day of testing. They didn't have a spare chassis, so when Alex crashed in Australia, they had to make a decision of which driver will drive, and they decided that they had the best chance with Albon. Again, not saying that's the bad decision in terms of the track record between the two of them. That was the right decision. It sucked. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that Logan didn't, at least to the media and what we saw, if Logan didn't even really, he wasn't mad. As Max said, if Max was told his teammate crashed, but they're giving his teammate his car, Max would have crashed. Like Logan, I understand his race pace wasn't there. I understand his qualifying wasn't really there. I get he didn't score points, but for the way that they decide to treat him is, I think, where people get upset about the whole thing. I don't think they're upset with the logic behind it. I think they're just upset. At least this is how I feel about the whole situation and how I'm seeing it from TikToks, from Twitter, from Instagram, like all this. And we're not there. We don't know these drivers. We don't know the teams. We don't know what's happening in them. But the way that Williams was portraying getting Carlos and then now dropping Sargent, it is a little manipulative. It feels non-authentic. I really like James Valls as a team principal. I like the dynamic he's making in Williams, but that does put a little bit of doubt and maybe some red flags in my mind about it. I understand it is a tough sport and not everyone's going to survive, but they're still humans. The drivers are still people. They have feelings. There are things to consider. And I feel like sometimes he doesn't I know he shouldn't have to take that into accountability, but you are dealing with a massive public.
And that public can be very harsh and very critiquing.
Again, I think if most people really sit down and look at it, they understand the decision. They understand why it's happening. I don't think that's the debate. I think the debate is about everything else that surrounded it. But I don't want to put this out there. I don't want to jinx. I seriously don't want to put this out there. But if Franco Colapinto is crash happy, what do they do?
Who knows?
Do from what it sounds like, he's still part of the team for the rest of the season. So maybe Logan has become basically the reserve driver.
Okay, we have 9 weekends or so left.
Mm-hmm.
If Colapinto manages to score, let's say 25 or so points in that
That's
weekend,
pushing it.
I'll be
That's
happy.
pushing it. If he can score 2 points, I'm setting a low bar
A very
because
low bar.
and it's not because of it's not to doubt his ability. It's because of the other teams around on the grid. The fact the Williams, well, who knows? Because that Williams might be actually a lot better now with the upgrades, even though the upgrades was technically illegal. But I think the fact that he's joining at Monza gives him the best chance to score points because Williams has always been really good at Monza. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens this weekend.
So, okay, let's make a little prediction for the rest of his season. So the next 8 or 9 races.
I see him scoring 5 points
Uh,
and either out qualifying or beating Alex one, maybe two times. And that's either or. Either he out qualifies him or he just beats him in the race.
all right. So that's a bold prediction to make. Not a bold prediction. It's a very safe assumption to make. I'm gonna say that he scores a total of 25 points.
And teammate versus teammate.
Teammate versus teammate. That's a hard one. I'm gonna say that he out qualifies Albon half of the time.
You are putting so much faith in this kid. If that's the case, I'm so scared for Alex next season. So scared.
Why?
I think that might just, I don't think it will rock his confidence, but having a teammate who you were whitewashing to then having a teammate who is still in F2, who's being promoted midway through the season, outperform you when you've been in the car longer half the time, knowing who you're getting as a teammate next season.
And that teammate being a proven Grand Prix winner.
I mean, Albon should have been a Grand Prix winner in my opinion, but I won't say whose fault his two wins were caused by. Brazil, whichever, I think it was the Hungaroring for the other one. No hate to the fan base of the driver I'm describing, but you know who you are. You know what you did. All right. I think that about wraps up Zandvoort.
Yep. And we will, of course, be here for Monza. And
F3 final commence. Six-way
F3
lead.
finale. Let's go.
Six-way battle for the lead, not seven. I'm still convinced that somehow, some way, I said it out there just to say it out there, but I feel like if one of the top three don't win, it's gonna be like because Bogdanovich just like had a worldie.
All right.
Like I said it, I'm like, watch us both be wrong, and it's like the top three end up, I think it was what, DQing in both or not scoring points in both races, and Bogdanovich just like sneaks. Because I know I said Mini, and I'm still feeling confident with Mini. I believe you said Fortiroli who's leading right now. Is that who it is?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I believe that's who you said would win.
Yes,
So
that sounds about right.
So now that I said it, it probably won't happen, but I'm
Uh,
just like it could happen.
I hope, for my own sake, that Bogdanovic ends up winning.
I mean, he is the Ferrari Academy driver.
And if he ends up winning and Paul Aron stays on in F2, that will be very fun.
Ah, I don't even want to talk about the Paul situation.
We will talk about it at some point.
I just feel so bad. I think about it and I want to cry. That the fact he if he doesn't win or get a team to like sponsor him or get more sponsors, he's done. Like I can't. I actually can't.
Like it or not, but we have to talk about it at some point in the future.
Well, that's a month. We'll talk about it at Monza. We'll see how the race goes in F2, and if we have to talk about it, we talk about it. My poor heart won't be able to take it, but we'll talk about it.
All right. Yeah. Like we said, we will, of course, be there for Monza and Azerbaijan and all of these other
The
races.
rest of the season.
Yep.
But we look forward to talking to you guys, well, having you listening to us later, but talking to you guys later. Stay tuned for Monza coming out sometime next week. Enjoy Monza wherever you are watching. Maybe Ferrari will pull out some magic with their livery sucks. I'm just gonna state it. It should have. They can't tease an all black kit and race suit and then not have a black car.
Well,
all right, we're finishing. No more tangents. Well, I can talk about it more next week. This weekend. Yeah. No more.
No more this week. Well, I think the suits deserve their own little rant.
The kit is the only thing that's good about this weekend. The team kit, not the suits, the team kit.
Okay, I'm looking forward for that.
But enjoy the rest of your day, guys, night, guys, morning, whenever you're listening to this or watching this. Again, our socials are at the paddock. Give us a follow. Let us know your opinions. Any questions, we have an email, both from the podcast here that you can go to, or in the link tree on all of our socials has it as well. We will catch you guys later.